Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Today is the day that I'm going to be talking about an issue that I mentioned the other day on the channel and said that I was going to talk about it coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and that is the opt-outs that are going on right now in the bowl games. But before I get into that, let me quickly say, for all of you in the North Georgia and Northeast Georgia area, please come out this upcoming Saturday night, January the 8th, to 244 Livestock Road, East Denali, Georgia, and enjoy some SWA wrestling. Doors open at 6. Bell time will be 7 o'clock. So please come out Saturday night and enjoy some great SWA wrestling. But on to the opt-outs video. And honestly, I was going to wait until one day next week to talk about this. But it got brought up again on the radio yesterday. And as I was listening to them talk about it, I said, you know what? I was going to talk about it one day next week, but it just continues to be talked about. So it's time for me to go ahead and do a video about it and give my thoughts on it. So I'm going to do that because my biggest question is what's happened to make the players and the NFL agents feel like bowl games are now pointless, and how can we fix it? Everybody knows by now that I only watch ESPN when they're showing a ball game, whether it's baseball, basketball, football, whatever. I don't watch any of their shows. But I got a notification on my phone on Saturday, and it was talking about Kirk Herbstreit taking a lot of flack for what he said apparently on College Game Day, either on Friday or Saturday. And a lot of times, just like in this situation, people get way too bent out of shape too quickly, and they hear what people don't say instead of listening and hearing what they do say. And Kirk Herbstreit basically, to make a long story short, just said that some of today's players don't love the game. And he's 100% right. He never one time said none of the players. He said some of the players, which is right. And it goes back to something I mentioned a couple of weeks ago talking about the bowl games. And that was that most teams come bowl season have 3 or 4 players that don't want to play. If you've got 85 players on your team and 3 or 4 don't want to play, well, that means the overwhelmingly majority of your players still want to play. So you can't let 3 or 4 guys spoil the whole bunch and say none of the players love the game. And that's why Kirk Herbstreit said some of the players, and he's right. And the problem is, how do we fix it? And I'll give you an example. Kyle Hamilton, and if you don't know who that is, he is a defensive player for Notre Dame. He tried to push back at what Kirk Herbstreit said and said something along the lines of, well, Kirk, if you had a job offer where you could leave College Game Day and take life-changing money, but if you did College Game Day one more time, it was going to negatively impact your job in the future, would you do it? Well, that sounds great on the surface. But here's the problem. He is making it sound like only bowl games are pointless. And if you're a college football player and your reason for setting out a bowl game, whatever that bowl game is, because it's pointless, what's the difference in a pointless bowl game and a pointless regular season game? And I'll give you a few examples. Now, I'm not going to sit here and go over every single team schedule because it would take way too long, but I'll just give you a few of the big name teams that had some big name players set out their bowl game. Oklahoma in the regular season played Western Carolina. Now, do you not think Oklahoma can't beat Western Carolina if one of their key receivers don't play, or if one of their key return men don't play, or if their key linebacker don't play. I mean, let's be serious. Is that not a meaningless game? To me, it is. Notre Dame, speaking of Kyle Hamilton, their regular season finale was against Stanford. Now, who do you think Notre Dame has a better chance of beating if Kyle Hamilton don't play? Oklahoma State or Stanford? Can Notre Dame not beat Stanford if Kyle Hamilton don't play? I think they can. Oregon played Stony Brook in the regular season. And I bet you 99% of people, if you ask them who Stony Brook is and where they play at without Google in 3 seconds, almost nobody could tell you. You think Oregon couldn't beat Stony Brook if that big-time defensive player Thibodeau didn't play? I think they could. Ohio State in the regular season played Akron. Michigan State in the regular season played Youngstown State. So what's the difference in a meaningless bowl game and a meaningless regular season game? If you're not going to play a game because it's meaningless, then set out the regular season game because it's meaningless. There's no difference. It's just for whatever reason, it seems like as a society, we have all of a sudden set back and just said, oh, you know what? They don't want to play. I'm okay with that. But if they do it in the regular season, everybody is going to talk about it. So why do we accept them setting out a bowl game, but we won't accept them setting out the regular season? In a weird way, I kind of respect Jamar Chase because if you recall, a couple of years ago, before the season started, Jamar Chase told LSU, hey guys, you know what? I'm on the team, but I'm opting out. I'm just going to set out the entire regular season. Because at least that way, LSU knew before the season started that one of the best, if not their best receiver, was opting out and he wasn't playing. So in a weird way, I respect that. He didn't just choose one game and decided that one game was meaningless. He decided the entire season was meaningless. So I actually respect Jamar Chase for that because he didn't want to put any game more important of a value than any other game. To him, they were all pointless because he was looking towards his future. So I want to know what's happened and why we all of a sudden are just okay with people setting out bowl games. But everybody knows if you were watching a regular season game and a player decided not to play for whatever reason, we'd be up in arms about it. But when bowl season comes around, we're okay with it. You don't have no more and no bigger of a chance to get hurt in a bowl game than you do in the regular season. And me personally, if I was a player, I would want to play the bowl game because whether you're a senior or if you're a junior that's draft eligible or a sophomore that's draft eligible, that bowl game is your last chance to impress the NFL scouts. Let's say supposedly you're projected to be a late first round, early second round guy, but you go out there and you're a wide receiver and you have 20 catches for 300 yards in your bowl game. Well, more than likely you've gone from a late first round, early second round pick to probably a top 15 pick. So to me, if I was a player, I would want to play in that bowl game to give myself one final chance to impress the NFL scouts. But that's not the only thing that bothers me. What else that bothers me, and I think bothers me more than the players not playing, is so many of them don't play, but then during the bowl game, you watch them, and they're sitting on the sideline or standing on the sideline talking to their teammates. I'm sorry. If you opt out and you decide you're not playing the bowl game, you should not be allowed to be on the sideline. You quit. Once you quit the team, you're no longer on the team. And if you don't think enough of me as your teammate to play, don't come to me and give me no advice. I don't want to hear it. That's like having a regular, everyday job, and in the middle of the shift, one of your coworkers just decides he quits and he walks out. But then the next day he wants to show up and come inside the job, whatever the job is, and walk around all day long and give you pointers. Are you going to listen? Nope, because he quit. I'm sorry, once you quit the team, you have no business being on the sideline talking to the coaches, players, anybody, because you quit. If you quit, you're not on the team. If you're not on the team, I don't need you. And I can speak about the subject only because of the fact, as a Clemson fan, I know I've mentioned this a few times, but I'll mention it again. Clemson had 28 scholarship players that were unavailable for their bowl game last Wednesday because they were hurt. So almost 1/3 of their team could not play because they were hurt. But of the 57 guys that could play, every one of them chose to play. Not one of them opted out. And that's the way it should be. When you're in college and you sign up to play football, you should play every game that you're available to play. Now, there's a couple things that I've thought about maybe you could possibly do to try to help fix this. And one is, with the name, image, likeness whole thing going on now, a lot of these sponsors that these players are getting, they should tell the players, this is for the entire season. The entire season goes from the first game until the last game, whatever that last game is. If your team does not make the playoffs and you go to a bowl game and you don't play, you don't get all this money. We're going to keep half, or we keep 1/3, whatever the overall amount is, keep something. That's one thing I have thought about. Maybe by some chance it could help. And another one is, I heard a guy on the radio yesterday say all they got to do is tell the players, hey, we'll pay you to play in the bowl game, which would work. The only problem with that is if you do that, you're just showing that it's 100% about the money, and the actual game itself does not mean diddly squat when you've got to pay them extra to play in that game. But I do think the whole name, image, likeness thing can help out. And you can also have each player sign some sort of contract before the season that says, hey, this contract is for, the total amount of games from the regular season until the season ends. The season doesn't end if you go to the playoffs. The season doesn't end when the regular season ends. The season ends when the bowl game comes around. And you've got to play in the bowl game unless you are actually legit hurt. Because you don't have no bigger of a chance to get hurt in a bowl game than you do getting hurt in the regular season. And even if you do get hurt, this day and time, it's not the end of the world. When I was growing up watching football, if you seen a player tear his ACL, you knew he was done for at least a year. And usually it was more than that. Nowadays, just a couple years ago, Amari Rodgers for Clemson, he tore his ACL in June. And by the time the season came around, he was ready to go. Because we've come so long now with technology in doctors and nurses and things like that, these surgeries now are not that big of a deal. So even if you get hurt in December, by the time the summer comes around, you're ready to play. So more than likely, it's not going to affect your draft stock and your draft status whatsoever if you go out there and get hurt in a bowl game. And I just don't understand how come we've become socially acceptable with players just opting out of bowl games for no reason at all. And it's hard for anybody to try to get mad at the player for making a decision that they think is better for them, because each person has to make a decision that they think is better for them. So if you think it's better for you not to play in the bowl game, I have no problem with that. The problem I have is the fact that your reason is it's a pointless bowl game when I just gave you many teams that had pointless regular season games. I'm sorry, but if you're Oklahoma, the risk of playing Western Carolina is worth more than the reward for playing Western Carolina. The risk for playing Stanford, if you're Notre Dame, is higher than the reward for playing Stanford, because the team is going to win with or without you. If you're Oregon, the risk of playing Stony Brook is better than the reward for playing Stony Brook. So if the risk is higher than the reward in these regular season meaningless games, then it should also be the same way in the bowl games. So if you're not going to play in the bowl game because of the fact you think the risk is higher than the reward, then you shouldn't play in the regular season. So that's my problem. If they don't want to play, that's fine. But don't try to tell me that a bowl game is more meaningless than a regular season game against a team that most people have never heard of. Because for a lot of these athletes, the bowl game for them is great because you're going to a city that you've probably never been to, and you're going around holiday time, and a lot of times you're in a city like Florida or Texas that's actually still pretty hot that time of the year, and you're getting to go out, and go to fairs and things like that, things you don't normally get to do. So for a lot of the players, they actually enjoy the bowl game for that reason. Whereas in the regular season, when you play all those pointless teams, they're all at home. So they really are pointless because you're not traveling, you're at home, seeing the same people, seeing the same bed, seeing the same shops, seeing the same restaurants. Where at least in a bowl game, you're getting to travel somewhere new, go somewhere new, go to new places. So I don't know why we think the risk is higher than the reward in a bowl game, but we don't think the risk is higher than the reward in a meaningless regular season game. What's the difference? I don't see what the difference is. So if anybody can tell me there's a difference in a pointless regular season game and a pointless bowl game, then please feel free to let me know. But I don't understand it. So I'm not really hating on the players because, like I said, if you think it's better for your future to not play in the bowl game, I'm fine with that. But if your reason for not playing is because it's pointless, then when your team plays these nobodies in the regular season, don't play. It's just as pointless. There's no difference. You can't have one and not the other. If the bowl game is pointless, then a regular season game against basically a high school team is just as pointless. So Kirk Herbstreit took a lot of flack the other day for what he said, but I agree with him because if you love the game of college football and you love to play and you love to compete, then you want to compete whether it's regular season or a bowl game. And if you just choose to sit out because the game is pointless, then you don't love the game. I mean, you look at the bowl games so far, just as a couple of examples. It shows you how most people actually want to compete, and they don't want to actually just compete for the money. Texas A&M, I know I've mentioned this, but I'll bring it up again. They backed out of their bowl game, and the reason why they backed out of their bowl game is because they had no quarterback. Their starting quarterback has been out since September. He's still hurt. The backup quarterback is now transferring, so he can't play. So the only quarterbacks they have right now are walk-ons, and they knew they were going to get beat. So they decided not to play. The Gator Bowl was $5.3 million. If they would have played Wake Forest and got beat 57-10, they would have made $5.3 million. But they didn't look at that $5.3 million. They looked at, hey, we don't want to get beat. So they would rather turn down the money than go out there and get beat because they wanted to win. Boston College, their bowl game wasn't $5.3 million, but it was somewhere along the $3 million category. They backed out of their bowl game because their entire offensive line was sick. Now, it's impossible to move the football with no offensive line. So, yes, if Boston College would have played, they would have got destroyed. But they could have easily said, you know what, we're going to get destroyed, but we're missing a good chance to get our school a lot of money. So let's just go out there and get beat and take the money. They didn't do that. They said, you know what? Forget that money. That bowl game can keep that money. We're going to get destroyed, so we're not playing. So those are just a couple of examples that shows you that the majority of the teams and the majority of the players, they want to compete to win. They don't want to compete for the money. So even though, for the most part, there are a couple of players on each team that don't play, the majority of the players on the team still want to play. I just want to know why we have become socially acceptable to players sitting out bowl games, but if they sit out in the regular season, we just don't think twice about it. And I wish more players would be like Jamar Chase. If you're going into your senior year or your junior year and you're leaving after the season and you don't want to play, instead of just saying, well, this game is meaningless, this game is pointless, just go ahead and do what Jamar Chase said and say, you know what, I'm sitting out the whole season. At least that way the team knows going into it that even if they go to the playoffs, you're not playing. Otherwise, play the whole season. Play none of the season or play the whole season. Don't just play in games you think mean something and set out the other games. They should all mean something or they should all mean nothing. That's the way it should be. No game should be considered pointless. If you have any thoughts on this, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. My biggest talent is being able to tell what's in a wrapped present. It's a gift. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.